one night out of the year, but its outcome determines the need for resources nationwide. Our Path Home is currently collecting data for the annual point-in-time count. It's to measure the amount of Ada County's homeless population, but only on the night of January 24th. Because of the tight window, we know it's not an entirely accurate figure. Local social workers know people will slip through the cracks. But as Andrew Bartline learned today, the trends are pretty clear.
It's hard to put a number on it.
How many people are literally experiencing homelessness?
But it's a figure the feds need.
An annual report to Congress.
And only made possible by local boots on the ground.
Yeah.
Casey Mattoon manages the Ada County Count.
I've always had an orientation towards issues like this. Like, how is this the collective community saying, yeah, we're okay with this?
Annual point-in-time counts go back to 2012, where numbers have peaked and dipped, but remain largely unchanged over the last decade. That's due to how the count is conducted.
That we can have a conversation with on the day that we're measuring.
And we know this is just the floor.
It's a difference of hundreds.
To qualify for the count, Casey and his team first need to find people and make face-to-face contact.
I was walking around at 4 a.m. like in this same area down the Greenbelt doing interviews with folks.
Then that person has to actually want to be part of the count too.
And some folks just don't want to engage, and either one of those things is totally okay.
Finally, they must meet the actual definition of homeless.
They're staying in a temporary emergency shelter, temporary housing, which is a very specific program. Or they're on the streets in their car or in a place that's not meant for human habitation.
It's reality for hundreds in Ada County alone.
A lot of this work feels really personal about the community.
And local social workers say there's no secret behind the problem.
Housing in this community remains unaffordable.
And less common. The annual housing inventory count shows the number of emergency shelter beds has increased significantly over the last decade. That's the teal line on top. But transitional beds, rapid rehousing beds, and permanent supportive housing, it's all dropped over that same period. It's reality that's in the way of the overarching goal.
End homelessness in our community.
But it doesn't have to be.
It's not a question of whether or not we can do it. It's a question of whether or not we get enough actors and funders leaning in to scale what we know works to address the problem that is in our community.
The official count numbers won't be available for a few months, but it's hovered around 700 people for the last several years, though the 2021 data is largely inaccurate because COVID stopped a boots-on-the-ground street count. Casey today advocated for a broad housing investment and availability. We also know the partner organizations, there's about 30 of them that work with Our Path Home. They support a housing first model. So the idea behind that, Joe, is you put somebody into housing. Maybe they're struggling to find employment. Perhaps there's someone that's struggling with addiction. Well, those other factors fall into place once those basic needs are met. That seems to be a very common thread among those partner organizations that work on this.
And I'm just curious for my own information, will they have a published survey or a published report that we could read more into?
Yeah, and that report goes to Congress, and it's from every individual local area around the country. This is for Ada County specific. But yeah, it'll have those numbers. The trends go back to 2012, but seems pretty stable in the homeless population here locally.
Interesting. Well, you made a good point in your story. You know, how do you know? Well, you have to ask. Andrew Bartline reporting here on the 208 on Friday. Thank you very much, Andrew.